Samuel Miller District. That is the largest district of the 6 in Albemarle County. It is the least populated of the 6 districts. It is the wealthiest of the 6 districts, the Samuel Miller District. And he's running as a Republican, the last Republican to serve on the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. Judah, pop quiz. Pop quiz for you as well. The last Republican to serve on the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. Scott, you know that?
15 years ago, I bet.
It was Ken Boyd.
Yeah.
Ken Boyd, the last one to do it, in Ned Galloway's district. He was a financial advisor. We're going to have some fun today with Scott. We'll introduce the viewing and listening public. This will be the interview that he does to this point, just because of the reach we have, that will have the, I'll go ahead and say it, the most significant introduction he's done for his campaign yet will be this interview, especially with the long-form nature of the interview, the visual and audio nature of this interview. And you, the viewer and listener, can ask questions of the candidate, Scott Smith, who is running for Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. We'll introduce you to his platform, his campaign. We'll talk about his opponent, Fred Missel, who works for the UVA Foundation. We will talk taxes. I mean, for me, the top, I think this entire campaign is about taxes and the regressive nature of taxes and how taxes, among other things, are turning Albemarle County into a homogenous county, into a just basically a playground for the wealthy and influential. That's what Albemarle County has become. I've been in this community 25 years, folks. I started as a University of Virginia student. Then I matured into a businessman. 17 plus years ago, I launched my business and have been self-employed for 17 years and change. Now, then a married man, my wife and I, proud to call Albemarle County our home. We're raising our 2 sons in Albemarle County, and nothing would make my wife and I happier than to have our sons one day live in Albemarle County. And unfortunately, with what we are doing as a government from a spend standpoint, I'm not sure our kids will be able to afford to live in Albemarle County one day. It's getting to that point. We'll talk about it with Scott. Like and share the show. Like and share the show. Anywhere you are watching, like and share the show. I think you're going to get to enjoy this gentleman. I think I'll cut to the chase. I'll say it to you when the cameras go on and the show starts. I think he's got an uphill climb. He's going to persuade me otherwise, I hope. But he's running as a Republican in a very blue county, guys. We'll talk about that, though. Judah Wickhauer, if you want to have a 3-shot setup, whether you want to, chime in with questions, you're Albemarle County voter as well. So you can, you're Albemarle County homeowner, a taxpayer as well, Judah. So this is right up your alley. Join us in the discussion, viewers and listeners. Things looking good on your end, J-Dubs? Okay, fantastic. Have Facebook Messenger open so you and I can communicate throughout the interview, please, sir. And I agree, things are looking good on our end. We got legacy media, print, radio, and television watching the interview as we speak. And I'll highlight some of the viewers and listeners that are watching the show here on a hot Tuesday. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. George Gilmer, I think you're going to appreciate this. Conan Owen, Bill McChesney, Katie Pearl, Jehu Martin, Tom Powell, Aaron King, G. Milo, Tom Stargell watching the program. James Callan, hello, appreciate you, James, watching the program. Logan Wells Claylow, a lot of folks watching the program. Goodness gracious. All right, let's rock and roll when you're ready, Judah. Good Tuesday afternoon, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and thank you kindly for joining us on the I Love CVille show. We very much enjoy connecting with you, the viewer and listener, through the I Love CVille network with content that's local to Charlottesville, Albemarle County, and Central Virginia. We air the content on every social media platform possible, every podcasting platform possible. I say this very humbly and very straightforwardly. There's no platform that is reaching more viewers and listeners collectively than what we're doing here on the I Love CVille network, because we're putting the content right here in the palm of your hand, on your smartphone, on the social media platforms you live upon and within. Today's show is one that is local. Scott Smith is in the house, Albemarle County Board of Supervisors candidate in the Samuel Miller District. The Samuel Miller District is an important district. It's one of 6 districts in Albemarle County. It's the largest district by territory size in Albemarle County. It is the wealthiest of the 6 districts, and it's the least populated of the 6 districts. And most importantly, the Samuel Miller District has 2 candidates, Fred Missel, who works for the UVA Foundation, and Scott Smith, a businessman who moved here 5 years ago from Colorado. This race is significantly important. It's paramount to the future of Albemarle County. We have a Albemarle County Board of Supervisors dais and elected pool of individuals that are obviously heading in a direction of progressive, and I say that mildly. We know the Jack Jewett district with Sally Duncan is going to be as progressive of any district with its voting now that Duncan has beat Dave Shreve. She will team with Mike Pruitt in the Scottsville district, potentially Ned Galloway in the Rio district, who's running unopposed for a 3rd straight race, a 3rd straight term, Ned Galloway running unopposed. Those 3 are half the Board of Supervisors, and they are progressive in their ideology. They are driving momentum and votes behind more density, more housing, more tax increases. And if they could potentially get a 4th to join their triad, their threesome, and that 4th could be potentially Fred Missel, you're going to see an Albemarle County that is going to change dynamic-wise, complexion-wise for years to come. And those changes will be tied with taxes, with housing density, with the expansion of a development area in a county that you may not recognize anymore. So we're going to have that conversation today with candidate Scott Smith. I'll weave Judah Wickhauer into the show. I'm going to ask him, why is he running as a Republican? Goodness gracious, the cojones and the balls to run as a Republican in a blue county like Albemarle County. Why not run as an independent? We'll talk about the regressive nature of taxes. We'll talk about maybe the conflict of interest with Missel and his employer. We will talk spend for Albemarle County as a government. So many topics to cover. Judah, I'd like to give some attention to one of our partners, if we could please, Charlottesville Business Brokers. Our business brokerage division here at the Miller Organization has brokered more than $4 million of business transactions in the last 24 months. And we're in the middle of one right now that is of nearly of a $2 million transaction, seller finance capacity. If you're looking to buy or sell your business, there's nobody that's doing more of that type of work than Charlottesville Business Brokers. And our friends at Charlottesville Sanitary Supply, it's John Vermillion, it's Andrew Vermillion. This business is 61 years of proudly serving Charlottesville. Charlottesville Sanitary Supply, guys, online at charlottesvillesanitarysupply.com. and located on East High Street. The Vermillion men, Albemarle Countyans of 4 generations, voters, the Vermillion men. All right, Judah Wickhauer, studio camera and a 2-shot. Without further ado, the man of the hour here. You're live. They see you on screen. Introduce yourself, Scott Smith, to the viewers and listeners.
Thank you, Jerry. Really appreciate the opportunity. So my name is Scott Smith, and I'm a candidate for the Samuel Miller District. So I live in the Crozet area, and have, as Jerry said, we moved here 5 years ago. We just fell in love with the area. It was geographically perfect for me in terms of getting to family members and aging parents and those kinds of things. And so just absolutely fell in love with the area and wanted to retire here, which I recently did. Spent my entire career in high tech, and that's been an innovation engine that's changed the world, and looking forward to bringing that kind of spirit of innovation to the county of Albemarle.
It's kind of a romantic story. Put the story of you falling in love with Albemarle County into perspective. It happened during the pandemic.
That's true. So 2020, we come out to visit a childhood friend of my wife's, and basically got a whirlwind tour. Funny story. the childhood friend said, "Hey, oh, by the way, there's a house for sale down the street, and I've got a friend that's a realtor, and we can show it to you if you want." And so we like looking at real estate. So we went down, looked at it, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was the rural scenic beauty. The house is nice, I like that, but the rolling hills. We're up against we're like the last exit on 64 before you go up over the hill, and we're up against the rolling hills, and I just absolutely love it. So it's breathtaking.
Ginny Hu watching the program, Connie Sylvester watching the program, print, radio, television watching the program. Viewers and listeners, you can ask questions. You can challenge our guests respectfully, following the golden rule. You can ask questions by putting your comments in the feed, and I will relay them live on air. I'll start with a few questions myself before I'll get to the ones that are coming in. All right, your platform. The show is yours. You got a lot of people watching here. Introduce them to your platform.
Okay, I'm going to probably focus on one key aspect of the platform right now, and hopefully we'll have time. We probably will have time. We'll come.
Got an hour.
Yeah, we'll come back to the other issues. But the topic that I consistently hear about is taxes. Okay, and as I'm out talking to people, and I can give you some examples, but everybody. Well, if you go back, like why I chose to run. The issue is basically opening those tax bills as a concerned citizen over time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, next year, oh my gosh, and just what we all just saw is you start looking at the combination of inflated property values and the tax increases, it's a double whammy. And one of the things I see is I've been out talking to people, like there's a gentleman, Mr. Johnson, that probably lives maybe a mile and a half from me as the crow flies. He's older, he's on a fixed income, he's on property that was his grandfather's property that's been kind of subdivided over time. But the only time he's been gone from that property is the 2 years that he served in the Army. And he is just getting squeezed. And I heard, a similar story like at the town hall meeting in Esmont when they were looking at the budget process. Vivian pipes up. She was sitting actually almost right next to me. She starts walking through, all of my, and she's sharing this with the supervisors. All of my costs are going up. And she talks about gas. She talks about insurance, home insurance, car insurance, groceries. She just kind of went right through the list. And basically said, both of them were kind of sharing the message, I can't really afford this. And what I see happening is that, you put it in a slightly different phrase about gentrified, but the bottom line is, working families and retired folks on fixed incomes are going to get pushed out. And, it's a theme that I hear them talking about. And I'd like to make it affordable for them to be able to stay and enjoy this lovely area. One of the things, on taxes that really kind of caught my attention, I don't know if you guys can...
Yeah, Judah, you can put this on screen. Let him know. He's going to give me the thumbs up, then I'll let you know when it's on screen.
Okay.
You do the play-by-play of what the viewers and listeners are seeing on screen here, and it's going to be up in about 5 seconds here.
Okay. So the issue is while we're waiting for it to load...
It's on.
Okay. If you look at this chart is from one of the town hall meetings for the FY26 budget, okay?
Fiscal year 2026? 2025?
The one that just started. Okay. And then it kind of projects forward, all right? And so the issue is, we all know we just got hit with a big tax increase, right? And we've all seen the tax increases in the past. But what this chart is breathtaking. It actually made my head explode when I looked at it. And the issue is, not only are we absorbing a large tax increase like right now, and that's a combination, I'm talking property values mostly, right? But it's a combination of the inflated property values and the tax increase. But look at it over time. That dark blue line, that's projected expenditures. That's going up, out through FY30, and the revenue target is below that. So only, speaking as a retired business person, there's only one of two things that are going to happen. You're either going to cut spending, and is that a pattern that you've seen in Albemarle County? Or they're going to have to increase taxes. What I see happening is this was the first round of many rounds to come on tax increases, and that will only accelerate the squeeze on the working families, on the people that live here, the retired folks. Again, they're just going to get pushed out.
Okay, so the dark blue line is what the county is spending stuff on. I'm just putting this in very layman's perspective.
That's right.
The county is spending stuff on is the dark blue line over a multi-year period of time. The gray line is the money the county has coming in.
That's right.
And the county is choosing to spend more money than it has.
That's
so
right.
eventually, the money's going to come due. And how the money is going to come due, how they're going to be able to pay the bills here, is by going to their stakeholders, which is you, me, the viewers and listeners, the people that live in the county, renters and homeowners. This doesn't just apply to homeowners, and say, give us more of your money because we have bills that are due.
That's right. And, I was in a board meeting a few months ago. So primarily it's going to come from us, right?
Yep.
The taxpayers. And you're absolutely spot on for the renters, because that's just going to get passed through for the renters as well, right? So I was in a board meeting a couple of months ago, and there was one of the supervisors brought up the point of, we have a lot of pressing needs right now. We can spend up to 10% of our budget.
Which supervisor was that? Go ahead and say it. We should know.
Mike Pruitt.
Yeah, Supervisor Pruitt, Scottsville District. I knew the answer, but Supervisor Pruitt.
All right. So they put this conversation out. We could, we have more need than there is, money available right now. So the conversation they brought up was, hey, we can borrow more. We've got room to borrow more in our window. And, I listened to that and I was like, oh my gosh, if one of my kids came to me and said, hey, you know what? This minimum payment on this credit card, I can actually afford more. We'd have a long conversation. Actually, it might be a short conversation, but we'd have a conversation about, kind of increasing that debt. So it's going to come from either, squeezing the current taxpayers now, or potentially putting more debt on that will, squeeze the future taxpayers. One way or the other, though, right? We're paying for that, and that number, that expenditures are forecasted consistently higher than revenue, and then not only. It's also climbing when you look at that chart. It's not flat, it's climbing. So anyway, this is the number one issue that I hear about. It's something that people really need to think about. One of the things, you were commenting to me earlier about, running, and it, takes some moxie to run.
I'm going to go straight up say you have balls here. Running, okay, you're either this, okay. You are extremely courageous, A. B, the nice way of saying it, man of tremendous moxie, huge balls, absolutely crazy. It's one of those things.
Sure.
To run as a Republican in Albemarle County, it's one of those things.
Yep. But people have a choice to make right now. And essentially, this is a referendum. They're not going to get the citizens of Albemarle County are not going to get a chance to vote on a referendum that says, hey, I'm fine with my taxes increasing. That's not going to happen. This race, I'm the referendum. If you're fine with the way that things are going, and there's some other things we'll talk about in a second too, but if you're fine with the taxes and the increase, and fine with kind of pushing out the working families, and great, vote status quo. If you're not fine, I'm your chance to be the referendum. They will be paying attention to this. It's starting to hit the press that there's a contested race, to the point Jerry made, and this is the referendum. If you vote for me, this vote's going to be a lot louder than just a district in Samuel Miller. It's going to be a message, a shot across the bow to the board that, hey, we need to pay attention. People are listening. People are paying attention. The pain is too much now.
I absolutely agree with what you just said, and I'm going to offer perspective on what you said.
Okay.
I think Albemarle County residents are feeling the pain and pinch of real estate tax assessments spiking, say, 30 to 50%, depending on your house, from 2019 until now. From pre-COVID, pre-pandemic until now, assessments in Albemarle County compound collectively somewhere between 35 and 50% increase in values for Albemarle County homeowners. This past, it was about a month ago, the supervisors decided to raise the real estate tax rate 4 cents. They increased the tax rate 4 cents. At the same time, assessments are spiking through the roof. Basically, the people in the dais saying, we want more of your money. And they disguised that tax rate increase by saying, we need more for police, we need more for fire and rescue, we want to do it for housing affordability. However you paint the picture, it's choosing to spend money they don't have. And they are asking us for more money to spend money they don't have. I will push back on what you just said. Albemarle County residents had an opportunity last week in the Jack Jewett district with Sally Duncan versus Dave Shreve to, your word, referendum, and say, Dave Shreve wants no tax increases. Sally Duncan is legitimately running television commercials that she's going to tax residents more. That's what her TV commercials were saying. And she still pounded Dave Shreve like a drum. Does that Sally Duncan victory in the Jack Jewett district over Dave Shreve, who was running on a platform of no taxes, does that demoralize or dishearten you, or does it invigorate you?
It kind of invigorates me because, again, back to the point, Samuel Miller, and I'll be on the ballot in November, right? The Samuel Miller district is going to get to make a similar choice. And I think that, no guarantees that people want to hold their tax, want to slow the roll on the taxes. And if they don't, that's fine. They can continue voting the way they are. But if they do, this is your chance in the November election.
Connie Sylvester says people are duped that nothing can be done or no change can happen. I agree with Connie. I think we're at a point in Albemarle County in the city of Charlottesville where voter apathy for the silent majority. And the silent majority, the majority of Albemarle Countyans are center aisle with their ideology. They may be physically conservative, socially liberal. They may be socially conservative, physically conservative, but they're center aisle with their ideology. They're somewhere between the Democrats and Republicans, the large portion of the people in the middle, same for Charlottesville. But for generations, decades, they have seen voter turnout and voter results just absolutely hemorrhage to the Democratic side that the silent majority is so apathetic, they are choosing not to engage because they are of the mindset, why participate? My vote really doesn't matter. Look at these years of history. How can you turn that apathy around? Because that's another key to winning this race here. I understand the strategies of door knocking. I understand the strategies of campaigning and coming on shows like this, but it's going to take a special candidate to basically transition apathy into engagement with the silent majority that's out there that's not engaged.
Yeah, I think I would use apathy would also probably equate to like a lack of hope, maybe. You could kind of flip it either way. But I think, when you're talking to a business person, I spent my entire career in business and specifically the cutting edge of high tech, and I've watched it transform the world over the decades that I've been working on that. What I'm suggesting here is, one person like myself, a candidate, is not going to change the board, right? That's one vote out of 6. But what it does do is it gives you a seat at the table, and I'm offering hope that there's an opportunity to bring some rational business sense to the Albemarle County Board. I'll give you an example. One of the board meetings that I went to, there was a specific line item where they were going to increase the spend, and I was like, I'd like to go hear the conversation on that. So I went to the board meeting, and then 3 hours into the board meeting, it was riveting. I'll let you know.
Tongue in cheek, okay?
Yeah, tongue in cheek. But when they hit that item, they're like, okay, we need to have a closed door meeting on this topic. And then, the motion was made, the motion was seconded, boom. I mean, literally like in 45 seconds, they were all gone. They went upstairs, I think, to vote. I never heard kind of what happened with it. But the issue is you need someone, you being the voters, and in this case, I'm talking to the voters of Samuel Miller.
You need an accountability measure.
You need an accountability measure, and there's a couple of things. But also, the seat at the table is really important because if you had elected me, I would be sitting there at the table with that business perspective. And when I sit in those board meetings, I can't say yes or no, but it doesn't appear to me that there's someone that has Fortune 500 business experience or startup business experience in those conversations. So I'm suggesting that you put someone at the table that has a conservative fiscal headset and put me in those conversations.
Deep Throat, I'll get to your comments here. Ginny Hu, I'll get to your comments. Jason Noble, I'll get to your comments. Viewers and listeners, put them in the feed. I'll relay them live on air. That's why I thought Meg Bryce's run last year for the at-large seat in the Albemarle County School Board was so important because she had the courage and the gumption and she had the chutzpah and thick-skinnedness to be that adversary ideology or that accountability measure. When she lost and Allison Spillman won, and Spillman won by a massive margin, you now have a school board that is basically towing the same company line that Albemarle County schools have always done, and the school system has struggled in my 25 years. It's not gotten better, it's struggled. Look at what the school board just did a couple of weeks ago. They gave themselves 100+% raise. A Democrat school board chose to give themselves a raise of more than 100%. Which is insanity to me here. That's why I thought Shreve was so important in the Jack Jewett race, because he was an accountability measure, a kind of like a bellwether, if you may, on the dais had he won the Jack Jewett district. A guy that would say, no, we don't need this. He would have been overruled, but at least he could have peppered the trail with his thoughts, with his dissenting vote. I think that's what Scott is saying that he's going to do. Comments are coming in quickly. I'm going to get to them in a matter of moments. A couple for me before I get to the viewers and listeners. Your opponent is Fred Missel. He's running as a Democrat, backed by the machine. He's in the Samuel Miller district, a known commodity, been around forever.
Yep.
Works for the UVA Foundation. Where do you want to go with this, your opponent?
Well, I had a chance to meet him a couple of weeks ago. We were at a forum together. We sat next to each other and talked. Very affable. I personally liked him, right? The issue is, let's kind of step back for a second. If this bottle, I don't know if we're live on screen, but if this bottle...
They can see that. Yep.
If this bottle of water represented, Albemarle County and the 726 square miles of Albemarle County, the portions of the bottle that are the UVA land holdings, when those are basically deemed for educational purposes, there's no taxes paid on those, okay? And there's billions of dollars of assets that the university doesn't have, taxes on. But let's go specifically to the UVA foundations. So you look at their website, they provide, quote unquote, in the, financial services and real estate services for the benefit of UVA. That's what it says on their website, right? And you roll down to his position, he's responsible for development. And so in his volunteer job that he does right now, he's chairman of the planning commission, right? That sounds great, okay? He's chairman of the planning commission, that's good. But when you start thinking about it, he's also arguably the biggest developer in Albemarle County.
Works for the biggest developer.
Yeah. But he's also responsible for the development projects within there, right? Okay, so now you've got someone that's working on the biggest development projects in the county, and you've also got all these headlights, and you're creating recommendations in terms of where we're going for land use in the county. If that was stock and not land, it would not be a pretty outcome. And so I think there's a tremendous conflict going on here. And again, all I want to do is just highlight it. People can make their own decisions, but who is going to serve your interests best? A retired business person that spent decades in the business world, or someone that's getting a paycheck, that's going to take them in a different direction for the best interest of the other, the organization that he works for.
We'll get viewers and listener comments on screen. If we could get Ginny Hu's photo on screen, she's watching on Twitter. She said, it sure would be nice to have a variety of viewpoints on the board. She says, very well said, Mr. Smith. I pray that there are a significant number of people paying attention to what you are saying. She also adds, we also have to take into account voter turnout for a primary is different than a November election. She's pointing to the comments I made about the Jack Jewett race. Smith is Scott, who's here, is going to a general election. This will be determined in November, not in the Democratic primary in June. She also says, I don't agree with that and believe we should vote at every opportunity, but that's just the way it is. There'll be greater turnout in November than there was in June. Deep Throat, his photo on screen, he says, on Jack Jewett, it is like 70% renter housing units. We know renters ultimately pay the property taxes, but they never open a bill. I think that matters. So he's basically saying with Shreve and Duncan, because 70% of the district are tenants or renters, that Duncan had an overwhelming edge for Shreve because Shreve ran on this no tax platform. And these renters didn't have a chance to really get in. I see what he's saying there. He says with Samuel Miller, it's the exact opposite, like 70% homeowner. They do open bills. So they are going to be stung by the taxes that we've all been stung with. Me personally, my house, 23% year over year assessment increase for our respective house, and it stung. Deep Throat also says, what does Smith think about the fiscal impacts of residential growth? The budget has come under increasing pressure over the last 5 years. People like Mike Pruitt say growth pays for itself. Yet Albemarle County has seen over 10% increase in housing units, well over half of that in multifamily units since 2019, and yet the budget gets worse and worse and worse. Your thoughts on that?
Well, First of all, I like that name, Deep Throat.
Yep,
And
number
I like
one
to-
in the family, Deep Throat.
Okay. Okay. I'd like to also thank Jenny for her prayers there. So, in terms of the residential growth, I mean, Deep Throat is bringing up, that's a funny name.
Watching at his ranch in Montana right now. He lives locally, however.
Okay. But he's bringing up a really good point, because one of the issues is when someone moves into the area, let's assume that, a family moves into the area and they have several kids, right? So probably each of those kids, is costing about, $14,000-$15,000 a year.
At least.
For the school.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then there's other services as well. You
Right.
can go on, but the school is one that kind of jumps to mind. So
60% of Albemarle County's budget is public schools, folks.
That's right.
60% of the county's budget in totality. So when people say you build additional houses, that's good for incremental revenue for the county. It's actually the opposite. It's a negative for the county, because if these houses have children living in there, it's going to cost the county more money to educate these kids, keep them alive, keep them healthy, keep them sound. I apologize for interrupting.
no, but you're right. You're spot on. I love kids. I love being around
I have
kids.
two
but-
of them.
Yeah,
Most of the time
exactly.
I love them.
But the economics that he's pointing out are absolutely true in terms of the law of diminishing returns there.
So I'll straight up say this, and this is either going to drive momentum behind your campaign, or this is going to be something that's going to be utilized against you by activists in Charlottesville, livable Charlottesville specifically, Matthew Gillikin and Stephen Johnson. Are you pro building more housing in Albemarle County or against building more housing in Albemarle County if you're elected?
So I'd want to manage it. Again, so if you go into my background, and we didn't really talk too much about that, right? But, engineering degrees, et cetera, right? So I'm very pragmatic about it. And so when I see opportunities, let's say, we go to the club and work out, a couple times a week at the club, and you see these commercial sectors that aren't developed at all, like they're just sitting there vacant. You could develop those into, some mixed commercial use kind of things. There's some space there.
You're talking about 29?
I'm talking about 29.
So your club, Albemarle Square, ACAC?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, the Albemarle Square, exactly.
Okay.
So you're going by a couple of, one shopping center that's kind of struggling, another that closed a long time ago, right? And so I think there's some opportunities you could put some things in there. I don't think there's a lot of space around there that you could use. And I love the green space around Albemarle County. I'd like to see that preserved. I want to hold the line on the budgets. I would like to freeze the budgets for the spend, the revenue for the next 2 years, and rework that and look for opportunities to live within our means. If you're really serious about certain aspects that's a lot right there. Let me just kind of pause there. People may have some comments.
Okay, I'll follow up. Georgia Gilmer, your comments are on deck. Viewers and listeners, put your comments in the feed. I'll relay them live on air. Vanessa Parkhill, you got comments. You got print, radio, and television watching here. I'll straight up ask you this question then in a different way. 5% the development area, 5% of Albemarle County is allocated to development. We are not at the full 5% yet. We still have area in the development area that can be maximized to development potential. Are you in favor of expanding the 5% development area, yes or no, and why?
I wouldn't want I'll do maybe some pockets out there that make some sense, but I wouldn't want to significantly expand the areas. But
So you do not want to expand the development area?
No, I don't.
Okay. I like that. Keep going.
But let's talk about again, remember I've got an engineering background from a gazillion years ago, right? So let's talk about some pragmatic things. So the latest data that I have is from June of 24, right? And it lists all the different counties. So right now it shows Albemarle County, the community development, which is what we're talking about right now, at 178% of average, for the other counties. But the other side of the equation is public works shows at 45% of average. So, just pragmatically speaking, I don't think you're going to get sewer, power, all those other things. They just have underinvested in the county. It's probably not there to be used, right? Because if you're at 45% of average spend in Virginia, it's not there.
This is what I would do if I was you. I've been here 25 years. I follow this extremely closely. If I were you, I would do this. I would wave the flag. If I'm elected to the Samuel Miller District as your Board of Supervisor, I will promise you in my 4 years, I will not vote for a single tax increase across the board. I will not vote one tax increase across the board. That's what I would do. Second thing I would do is, if I'm elected to the Samuel Miller District, I will not vote to expand the development area 5% in any capacity. Third thing I would do is, I will prioritize infrastructure over housing density, because incremental housing is a net loser for the county. It's not a net winner. That's the next thing I would do. I would also swear and promise my voters that I would not take a single pocket of the development area and trade it out for another pocket outside the development area, like Mike Pruitt is trying to do in the Rivanna Village outside of Glenmore. I would try to preserve green space, the environment, quality of life, and I would bust my ass to drive economic development in Albemarle County. Try to create incremental jobs for people that live in Albemarle, not jobs for people that are outside Albemarle, like the Paul Manning Biotech Institute or the Data Science School. I'd figure out a way to take the people that live in Albemarle County and help them climb the professional ladder. If you ran on a platform like that and you got it far and wide to everyone, I think you could take apathy and drive it and convert it into engagement. But the climb is significant for you here, especially choosing to run as a Republican. Why run as a Republican and why not run as an independent? I'm baffled by this. I love you. I think you're affable. I think you're likable. I think you're new to the area. Maybe that new to the area is a little bit of blinders for you. I've been here 25 years. Why the R and why not the independent?
I mean, I could have gone either way. I think that I have pretty conservative values that align pretty well with the Republican
So do independents, though.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. You're right. So, I mean, it could have gone either way. I chose to go Republican. But what I'm counting on is that there are people across all parties that are going to use some common sense, whether they're Democrats, independents, or Republicans, and kind of pull together a coalition of some of these folks to make some common sense decisions. You know, you hit on a number of really key issues, and I want to maybe take some of the bigger ones and just kind of touch on them really quick. Like you were talking about prioritizing the infrastructure that I was just talking about, you know, in the stats. You're right, because if we keep this rate of, you know, going around some of the development activities, but we're not expanding the infrastructure. I mean, clearly, infrastructure under Public Works is dramatically underfunded. That just means more traffic, right?
I mean, you could just humanize it even more than that. Kids are learning in trailers outside schools. How about we build new schools before we allow Old Trail to expand? Before we allow more housing on Route 29 and the northern feeder pattern. Let's build a school so kids don't have to live in trailers. How about you humanize it by saying kids are spending 2 hours on a bus to and from school, showing up late to school, getting home from school because we don't have the transportation, because they're waiting and stuck in traffic. Or we can humanize it by saying with all this housing that's being built, the traffic is obscenely congested, which is creating major environmental impacts. Like stuff like the Paul Manning Biotech Institute, the Data Science School. I legitimately have been told by the people that have signing as close to signing the checks as possible that the incremental population increase from data science and Paul Manning over the next 24 to 36 months, those two schools alone will uptick the population 5,000 to 8,000 residents. And those 5,000 to 8,000 residents are going to be earning incomes that are well above the 125,800 HUD median family household income here. And when we get an uptick of 5,000 to 8,000 people in the next 36 months, this county and Charlottesville City will see levels of gentrification and displacement that they have not seen maybe since Charlottesville and Vinegar Hill, where an entire black community was raised by the government and put into projects, into public housing. Like literally it's going to have that kind of impact. And no one is talking about this except what we are doing right here. And it just frankly flabbergasts me. I'm going to get to the comments here in a matter of moments. I mentioned to Mr.
Can I hit one other point though? Yeah, just so
this burns me up. Can you tell? I mean, I love what you're doing here.
Yeah, but let's talk. The last thing you mentioned was economic development, right? And it gets back to my business background. I would absolutely work as hard and as focused as I could, you know, in terms of trying to grow that. But one of the things I don't see on the current board is a business perspective, right? And so I think that I would be a huge asset to understanding the way a Fortune 500 company thinks. I mean, that, you know, understanding, you know, pretend you're a Fortune 500 company, Jerry, and you're thinking you've got options all over the state of Virginia. You've got options all over the country in terms of where you might want to expand. You might have some personal preferences, like you have a family here in town, right? So you might have a personal preference to stay. But if you're a Fortune 500 company or some significant company, you've got a lot of options. And and the leaders of this community, which is the board of supervisors, they need to understand that perspective. They need to understand the options that are available. If we're going to draw, if that's a topic that you want to do to, grow the tax base a little bit more, you need to understand it. So,
Okay, then how about we talk specifics on economic development? How do you drive economic development in Albemarle County that caters to Albemarle Countyans and not well-degreed or significantly degreed outsiders that can fill $250,000 a year salaries and roles, basically displacing locals when they take these jobs?
Yeah, I think the one element that needs to be further explored. I do have a significant background in Fortune 500 companies. I also have significant background in startups. And I think back to my comment about, what would draw someone to Albemarle County. You're a good example, right? You went to school here, you started a business here, etc. I think those are the kinds of people, if you create an environment and do some experimentation about looking at, folks kind of doing startup activities, and it could be a lot of different things, right? It could be a programming job, it could be, someone wants to start a bakery. There are all kinds of things, but I think we need to look at more entrepreneurial. We need to look at reasons why someone's probably here and might want to stay here and expand here.
So I appreciate that answer. As just a friendly suggestion from someone who's been here 25 years, what I would do is, as part of your campaign, is I would say, look, Albemarle Countyans, instead of maybe allocating all this money to housing affordability, which has had little impact in actually creating housing affordability, why don't we allocate some of this tax revenue to taking Albemarle Countyans and training them on biotech or data science so they can climb the professional ladder? Why don't we allocate some of this money to K-Tech, where we're training kids on learning the trades? The trades are six-figure jobs waiting to happen.
They are,
because
absolutely.
we don't have enough experienced tradespeople that are out there, and the ones we have are older and longer in the tooth and retiring. So maybe what we can do is shift this mindset, which is just punch drunk with housing affordability, and shift that mindset into a mindset of educating the lower class, the middle class, the upper middle class in Albemarle County into these jobs: artificial intelligence, biotechnology, data science, the trades, where they can learn this on county dime or subsidized by the county, and then stay in the county working for these schools that are materializing. I just don't understand why government is not thinking like an entrepreneur in that capacity. We have comments coming in so quickly here. Georgia Gilmer's got comments, Jason Howard's got comments, Jason Noble's got comments, William McChesney's got comments. Everybody is watching right now. Gilmer says, was just going to say the Board of Supervisors needs a check and balance, but a seat with a different perspective is needed. Jason Howard says this, Jerry Miller, what does Mr. Smith think about the pace of growth in Crozet? You have highlighted on your show before, I feel like we are 3 or 4 years from the commute from Crozet to downtown Charlottesville being an hour one way any time of day. Love that question from Jason Howard. Your thoughts on that, Scott?
Well, just you go look at the last 5 years and you start trending that. He's bringing up a really good point, and there's a lot more growth that's happening, right? If you lived in Crozet, for those that don't, there's been huge clearings out there where new houses are going to be going in, right? And I think, again, back to that comment I made about the public infrastructure, I think we need to slow down a bit and get the infrastructure in place first, right, before you kind of keep take the foot off the gas a little bit to get that infrastructure out to speed. I don't know how long it'll be for an hour commute, but it's pretty significant. And like yesterday, we're on the way to the club that I mentioned, right? So there was an accident on 64, so we eventually worked our way back and went back to 250, got down to 250. Well, what did everybody else do? The same thing.
Yeah.
Right, so we got blocked, so we didn't make it to class yesterday. So
I live in Ivy. I know that path extremely well.
Yep, that's the path. Yep.
Jason Noble's got questions for you here. He says, how are you campaigning specifically? He suggests make sure you are everywhere, social media, on every outlet. I'll add to that. Are you willing to be aggressive in your campaign and highlighting and I think he's doing that, the spend-focused nature of the Democratic machine and or the ties your opponent has to the developer UVA Foundation? Will you specifically mention that in your campaign materials?
So I think I am. That's exactly what we're doing right now, right? And you'll see some other articles coming out in newspapers here very shortly. They're going to talk about the same kind of thing. So some of the key points, and that's why I started that. I skipped over some of the other topics to just focus on this.
Vanessa Parkhill watching the program. I'm going to get to Vanessa's comment here in a matter of moments. And viewers and listeners, put your comments in the feed. I will relay them live on air. What's the door knocking experience been like for you so far?
I've met a lot of really interesting people. I've spent time, with farmers and, listening to some of the concerns that they have. And there aren't that many of them left in the county, just to be honest with you. I've spent time with folks. You're knocking on their door and you're hearing. You get to spend time and you get to know them. And again, that the folks that are out there on fixed incomes. My general experience is positive reception. People appreciate the fact that somebody's out there talking to them. And how often do you get a candidate that's running for the Board of Supervisors, and hopefully in the future, my plan is to be the supervisor knocking on their door, right? Staying in touch with people directly. So I'm getting really positive feedback.
Vanessa Parkhill, voter apathy comes from a few places. The privilege that goes along with the wealth in our area, they can afford to be apathetic. A belief that they have no power, lower income voters who feel hopeless or are in government dependency situations, or people who have forgotten that there is more to voting than just showing up for presidential elections every 4 years. Vanessa also adds, how does Scott Smith propose that our Board of Supervisors reconciles what appears to be an overwhelming desire of area residents to provide help from the government with the desire to keep taxes low? I'm all in favor of helping our neighbor directly from my own pocket versus having government take those dollars and choose how to direct them or where to direct them. That's from Vanessa.
So I think the issue here is, if you think about government, it's essentially a service. You're providing a service. Maybe it's, law enforcement services, for example, or it could be redistributing income. But they're getting the money from the taxpayers and they're spending it or giving it to others, right? So my goal is to basically live within our means and be more prudent about how those things are being spent. She's bringing up a really good point. I mean, individuals like, there's a number of charities that we help. My wife and I made a couple trips, during that last round of hurricanes last fall. We made a couple trips down to the Carolinas with our trailer, and first we just kind of emptied a bunch of stuff out of our house and we took it down there. And then the second time we worked with some friends and it was a lot more organized. The first time we were down there within days, in less than a week. Second time, we were coordinating with people and they bring stuff to our house and then we drove it down. But that's an example of an individual doing something to help others, right? There was no funding for that. But I want to make sure that it can be as affordable as possible for the current residents of Albemarle County. I don't just believe in spending willy-nilly. I mean, I get what she's saying, and I do see the behavior in the board meetings, but we need to live within our means. If you go back to that chart, and I hate to put you on the spot.
Yeah, Judah can do that. That's no problem at all.
Let me know when it's back up online. And anyway, just kind of talking
it's
to
on
it.
Screen?
Yeah. I mean, this is not sustainable.
No, it's not. It's
not sustainable. And so we need to make some different decisions. And this is your chance to make some different decisions. In a minute, hopefully, Jerry, before we go off air, I would like to share like the specific voter precincts for
Yeah,
Samuel
please,
Miller. So people,
please.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do that now so you don't forget. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Bottom line is, having expenditures and forecasted dramatically higher than revenues over, a 5-year period? This is ludicrous.
It's ludicrous.
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about Samuel Miller, because a lot of folks, don't actually know which, district they're in, but they know where their voting precinct is. So let me just kind of list these off real quick. So essentially it's like Ivy, East Ivy, kind of dropping down south and then out to the southwest portion of the county. But if you're voting at Ivy Elementary, which used to be the Meriwether Lewis Elementary School, or Red Hill Elementary School, the Miller Center for Public Affairs. So it actually literally goes right up to the city of Charlottesville there. Calvary Chapel Church, Country Green, Yancey Community Center down in Esmont, and the Mount Ed Baptist Church, the Yellow Mountain, that's where I vote. But those, I went through those really quickly, but those are the precincts that are the Samuel Miller district. So.
Viewers and listeners, comments are coming in quicker than I can keep up here. Deep Throat says this: I would point out to Scott Smith that Albemarle County currently has 11,000 housing units approved and unbuilt under the current system. That's a talking point for his campaign. Albemarle County, this guy knows data better than the supervisors know data, better than city manager and the county executive knows the data. He pours through the online portal, Scott. This guy does not make mistakes when it comes to data. He says you should point out to your guest that there is more than 11,000 housing units approved and unbuilt under the current Albemarle County development system. So for people to say that we don't have enough housing, we have 11,000 units in the hopper right now. And it just boggles my mind what 11,000 incremental units can do to quality of life in Albemarle.
Well, I'll give you an example. I was talking to someone just this last week, and they were telling me in a section of Crozet that I frequently go down there. There's kind of two paths into Crozet from my direction. And they were saying, there's a green section in there. And I said, yeah, that's one of the planning meetings they made. I don't know if I'd call it a bait and switch, but they made a last minute switch and put what's now a beautiful little green area down into high density housing. And I would actually encourage folks to reach out to me, specifically Deep Throat. That was a really great comment that you just made. But just to kind of across the board, if folks want to reach out to me, it's scottsmithforsupervisor@gmail.com. So again, scottsmithforsupervisor@gmail.com, or my website is scottsmithsupervisor.com, right? But feel free to share. Those are some really good suggestions, and I've had a lot of people helping me for the same reason. They're looking for some sanity, and I'd appreciate them reaching out.
Vanessa, your chart shows that our area is on the path to becoming Santa Clara, California, a beautiful area with lots of smart, caring people who are absolutely taxed up until their eyeballs. That's from VP. Comments coming in quicker than I can imagine. This is an interesting comment. What's the support that he's getting from the local Republican Party? We know the infrastructure, as Jerry calls it, the machine of the Albemarle County Democratic Party, and it's a machine that's backed by significant experience and know-how. What's the support he's getting from the Republican Party of Albemarle County?
I'm getting a lot of support from them, both financially and...
So Nancy Muir's the head?
Yep.
Yeah, can you go specifics, the support you're getting from whom and what kind from the Republican Party?
I don't think I want to go specific to the folks, because I haven't mentioned I was going to share their names, and it's a pretty wide group of folks that have been sharing, but I've kind of got what I'm calling my kitchen cabinet. We meet on a weekly basis. I've got folks that have helped me with specific things. For example, this chart that we were talking about, the 5-year projection, I was quoting off the per capita spending that was coming from a financial consultant. So there's a lot of folks that are interested in having us living within our means that I'm getting help from.
What do you make of Jim Andrews hand-picking Fred Missel to replace him? And I believe, in fact, I know for a fact, because I'm on vpap.org, which tracks top donors to the campaign. Jim Andrews, the current Samuel Miller District Supervisor, is the top donor to Fred Missel's campaign with more than $15K.
Right. I think he basically gave him his campaign
his PAC.
funds.
Yeah. Okay. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's a stamp of approval for continuation of the status quo, right? And if you look at just, the funding that I've generated since April 1st, right? Similar, but it's coming from a much broader base. So
he's got 16,974 cash contributions. Where are we at? It's public record, so you can let us know. We can look it up on vpap.org. Where are we at with donations with your campaign?
15 and change, I think.
Okay, and who are some of your top donors?
I don't think I want to...
Because it's public...
I'll tell you...
It's public record.
It is public record for those. I mean, there's also...
I'm looking at it.
I know. Yeah. I'm going to let people look at the public record. I'm actually one of the top donors myself.
I see that. $3,000.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I put into the fund. There's also a chunk that I've just spent outside of that, too.
It's interesting. It's sad. It's legitimately sad. I've sat in those rooms with the Albemarle County Republican Party, and I've talked strategy out of those rooms with candidates. There are so many donors, and there's so many candidate supporters, like key supporters of the candidates that are running as independents or Republicans in Albemarle County, that don't want to be doxxed or have their name or their checks or their donations in any capacity tied to an independent or Republican race in Albemarle County. It is disheartening. Why do you think that is? It's just the stigma or how the community responds to that support?
I mean,
Like you're hesitant to name some of your donors right now.
yeah, but it's public record, like you
It
said.
is. I'm looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, if somebody wanted to go look at it, they could look at it. I just think that,
The Republican has almost been stigmatized in this county, and it's even the independent, and it is absolutely disheartening, demoralizing, disturbing, disgusting, whatever the D's you want to look at here. I just don't understand how in the sixth largest county in the Commonwealth of Virginia, one that is extremely dynamic and sophisticated, certainly very wealthy and influential, that an independent or a Republican has been stigmatized or scarlet lettered. I know there's the collateral damage or the fallout or the trickle-down effect of higher education, and UVA
For
is
sure.
extremely liberal.
Yep.
So that's a big part of what's happening here. In 25 years of me being here, it was never like this. Like the Ken Boyds of the world or the Rob Schillings of the world, the last Republican on the city council, Rob Schilling, the last Republican on the board of supervisors, Ken Boyd. There used to be a time where we all could have a conversation at Tip Top Restaurant or at Dooner's Restaurant or at Far Downers and agree to disagree, leave the restaurant and still be friends. Now, if in any capacity, if you're tied to being an independent or Republican in Albemarle County, you are chastised. And I just don't get how we're at this point. Is this the Trump effect?
I don't know that I have an answer to that. I mean, I think you're definitely onto something there with a university effect for sure. But I think, and I know we're kind of coming up on time.
We got plenty of time. I know the owner of the network. We got plenty of time here. Yeah.
Okay, but I want to go back, and talk about basically this is the voters' opportunity to weigh in with your votes and your funding. Actually, if you want to go to my website, you can also feel free to generate plenty and often. On those 5-year revenue projections and expenditures. I mean, if you want your county to continue to spend like crazy, then just vote status quo. If you want a business mind in the conversation that's going to be more prudent with your dollars and try and freeze what's going on, then vote for me. And it's really clear. I mentioned it's kind of a referendum, and you're right. In Samuel Miller, it'd be more homeowners, but this is your chance to make a statement, and it will be heard. It will be a shot across the bow.
Comments coming in. Please get a Facebook page up. That's one comment.
Yep.
This comment from Mr. Noble, the GOP, the Albemarle GOP, needs to be extremely much more plugged in online than what they're doing. I will even say this, and this may ruffle the feathers of some in the GOP, but I think the feathers need to be ruffled. The Albemarle County GOP needs to figure out a way how it can youngify, youthify the stakeholders that are in the room. The Democratic machine has figured that out, invigorating youth into the Democratic machine.
Right.
The Republican Party has not done that in Albemarle County.
That's a topic that I'm actually working on myself.
I mean, I could spend 2 hours of offering feedback and strategy of how you can do that, and certainly utilizing digital, social media, and digital marketing and engagement and outreach is something they got to do. All right, I'll throw this, man. I respect.
Actually, I want to go back.
Please.
One comment that was it, Mr. Noble, that you
Yes.
read?
Yep.
Yeah. So I would encourage him with his comments to think about maybe getting involved there and donating there. So there's thoughts and there's actions, right? And I took action in terms of being a concerned citizen. So I would encourage him, if that's some suggestions that he have, go to those meetings and make your voice known. There's a meeting this afternoon, for example, but go online, look at their events, and participate and make those opinions known. Good feedback.
This on Twitter, as someone who worked in higher education, the refusal to participate in civil discourse started long before Donald Trump. So she's pushing back on what I said with the Trump effect or impact of creating apathy or the stigma of the Republican or the independent in Albemarle County. He says, Mr. Noble, I've been to one of those meetings. Everyone was very excited to have me and my wife there. So he's highlighting that he's been in the room before. All right, well, how about this question? Where did you grow up, and how did the place that you grow up impact who you are today? That one is put in the feed.
Okay, that's a good question. So I grew up originally from Western Michigan, And I grew up in university communities, very much like Charlottesville across the country. Number in Michigan. My dad was kind of, I'll just say, professional student, okay? And went on to be a research scientist. But I grew up, in university communities in Michigan. There was a research time that he was up in Nova Scotia, Canada, and then the biggest chunk was in Oxford, Mississippi, down at Ole Miss. So my freshman year of college was at Ole Miss. In fact,
The Running Rebels.
yeah, the Ole Miss Rebels. That's
Yep,
right.
yep.
And all kinds of interesting opportunities coming out of that. I was selected to go be a participant at Boise State in high school.
Me too.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I'm running into a lot. I was talking to a high schooler yesterday. There were 500 young men at Boise State in Virginia last week. So
I did Boise State in high school, and it was a fantastic experience. It's a week for folks that don't know. You spend a week away from your parents learning civic engagement, public participation, public speaking, debate. Just an amazing experience. Mike Pruitt watching the broadcast. A couple of city councilors watching the broadcast, Nelson County supervisors on the feed right now, planning commissioners on the feed right now. Neil Williamson from the Free Enterprise Forum is watching the show. He says hashtag seats available. I think Neil Williamson is a guy that just wants to see contested elections. So he's excited. I don't want to speak for Neil. I know Neil well. I'm proud to call him a friend. I'll speak for him in this regard. He's happy that we have a contested election. I know he would say that here with the Samuel Miller District. All right, we'll close with this. Why should people vote for you in the Samuel Miller District for the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors?
Yep, it's about living within our means as a county. Whether you're a family or a county, I think we need to be living within our means. We need to have, we can't have expenditures skyrocketing over time with revenues there. We need to, freeze. We need to look at what we're doing and how we're spending. We need to reprioritize. Jerry, you brought up some good examples of that, a few minutes ago. But the reason to vote for me is basically to send a shot across the bow in terms of, this county and the tax increases that are just, not only have just happened, those that are homeowners just open theirs. If you're renters, your rent increases, in your next round. But think about, living within the means. And that's what I'm going to be proposing. And at the same time, I'm going to bring the spirit of innovation from the high-tech community. If we had more time, and I know we're done, but I've been going through the process on rebuilding a deck and the permitting process, and that's a whole nother conversation.
A deck at your house, like an outside deck.
An outside deck at the house, and I am intimately familiar with that process now, and there are a lot of opportunities for improvement, and again, with someone with my background, could bring a lot to helping make the experience of working with a county, more friendly.
I get this email during the show, Jerry, why not start asking through your show and your platform for someone in the Jack Jewett district who does not agree with Sally Duncan to step up and run as a write-in candidate? Sally Thomas won as a write-in candidate, and as Yogi always says, it ain't over till it's over. Regards, Tom Loach. I appreciate the email there, Tom. I'm not, here's the thing, and I'll throw this to Scott. I do not underestimate ever, and Judah can speak to this as well, the reach that we have with the platform. And doing something consistently Monday through Friday at 12:30 every day, it starts becoming part of people's routines and habits watching the show, part of their day they can count on. Do people always agree with me? Absolutely not. But do they know that I'm not going to BS them and just give them how I truly feel and my passions? They know that. They may agree to disagree. They may agree, but they know I'm going to be honest here. I'll say this. I've been here 25 years, and it's sad for me to say this. If my wife and I were not so professionally invested, 17 plus years of owning a business and being self-employed, if we were not so professionally invested in Albemarle County, my wife and I and our two sons would sell our house, we'd make a hell of a lot of money, we'd sell our rental properties, we'd make a hell of a lot of money, and we could live anywhere we want in the world. And we could do it probably without working for years, just from exiting the real estate portfolio, okay? But we are invested here because we have to be professionally, because I like what I do, but I don't recognize Albemarle County anymore. I don't recognize it from a politics standpoint. The quality of life has been impacted. The charm of the small business, the small business owner, this as a businessman. I've never seen the small business owner have as much headwinds as he or she is having right now than ever
Oh,
And my
absolutely.
25, I mean, goodness, you want to talk about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'll give you a couple examples, and keep me on the straight and narrow
Yeah.
in terms of time, right? But
I like you. We're going to go long.
okay.
Yeah.
So I think it was Jenny that was talking a little bit ago about some of the experiences. But as I'm going around and talking, go back to the deck experience, for example, right? There's a lot of opportunities that I think you could improve the service levels that are happening out of the county. Simple things would just be working with the other county board of supervisors to start documenting. We'd work together to figure out which metrics we might want to document, like how many building permits are coming in, how long does it take, et cetera. But I mean, there's a process, there's a business right now that I know that they've been waiting like 14 months to get they've been paying rent down in the Samuel Miller district for 14 months on a property. That's not business friendly, right? And I'm
14 months without getting what they need from the county to maximize profits.
And I don't know that it's all the county.
Okay.
Like in the building permit process, there's a step in there that's not the county. It's coming from the health department also, right? So, but understanding the process. But yeah, 14 months. And last update I had was about a week and a half ago that they've been waiting. They've been paying rent on this property, right? I heard about an auto mechanic. I just heard this last week. I haven't had a chance to talk to him personally yet, but I plan to. That had to wait for years to try and do some expansion of their bays, like on an existing business, right? And but I asked a friend at church. I said, "Hey, I know you've got your business is in Augusta. You got some offices in Albemarle County. How's Albemarle?" This is just a general question that I asked early on. How's Albemarle County for working with? And I got kind of a scrunchy face and the eyes rolled and. You need to have government provides a service, and we need to be transparent about the services that we're providing. We need to advertise what kind of set some expectations. Advertised when I went down to talk about the building permit process, it was 15 to 20 business days. Okay. After the 20 business days is when I started personally engaging in the process and kind of politely going and finding out what's going on. I've learned a lot about the process. Some really nice people work there. There's definitely some areas I think there could be some improvements on. So,
Dude, you're legit. You're legit. I sincerely mean that. I think you are legit. I think you are authentic. You're likable. I think you could put yourself in a room and you'd make friends easily. I think you have the gift of human connection. Probably from your travels growing up, where you probably had to meet a lot of people when you were young, and that ain't easy, especially when you're young. You have the gift of human connection. Like, you're a likable guy. You're a cool guy. I wish you the best of luck. I give you serious props for doing this.
Thank you.
What you are doing here is not, he's doing this. If he wins, he's going to have half the county hate his guts, the other half of them be lukewarm and not even care.
Right.
And he's going to do it for, this is the anti-entrepreneur in a lot of ways, for like $19K, $20K, right?
I think it's like
20,
16 and change. Yeah.
Well,
But
they
it's
just
not
gave
even-
themselves a raise, so it's more than that now. This
okay.
happened this past
All right.
week.
Okay.
Yeah, and within the week they gave themselves a raise.
Yeah, but it's not about the money.
It's not about the money for you. You have money.
Yeah. It's about the service, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I respect what you're doing here.
Yeah.
I respect what you're doing. In hindsight, maybe I kind of hoped that you had done this as an independent, but I respect what you're doing. This comment comes in, and we'll close with this. It's fantastic that you're focused on the way the county is performing ministerial acts versus the actual zoning ordinance. You could have a very permissive zoning ordinance, but still get very little production from the staff, which is causing what you're basically saying, headwinds and friction with all projects. So focusing on a ministerial acts is something that this particular viewer is saying, good job on. I want to do this. I'll close because it's 1:40 and we got to go figure out how to make some money here at our business. You are welcome anytime you want to come back on.
Thank you, Jerry. I really appreciate it.
I sincerely mean that.
Yeah.
I sincerely mean that. I wish you the best of luck. Judah Wickauer, you were behind the camera. Thank you. We'll respond and react to this interview tomorrow, guys, on the Wednesday edition of the show at 12:30 p.m. But you just had 70 minutes to get to know Scott and his campaign for the Samuel Miller District. He's running against Fred Missel. I am an equal opportunity employer. Fred, if your campaign or you want to come on the show to talk about what you're doing, we will do that as well. We want to highlight both parties and both candidates here. But it's an important race, the Samuel Miller District, guys. For the elected officials, the legacy media, and all the viewers and listeners that are watching the program, thank you for joining us on the I Love CVille show. Judah Wickower, yours truly, Jerry Miller. So long, everybody. That was excellent. He's going to tell us when the mics and cameras are off.